Well, good evening. This is our post-election show, November 2024.
What happened here?
With us are Mike McEntee, Howard Lieberman, and Pastor John Matthews. But first, we return briefly to November 5. The election night mood in a Minnetonka brew house for Congressional 3 Democrats was upbeat. Kelly Morrison won. So too did local DFL state candidates Ann Johnson Stewart, Alex Falconer, and Carly Cotiza-Watoon. But then the national returns started coming in.
The returns are a little more discouraging than I would have liked so far, but we'll see. It could be a long night, could be a long week.
World, but it is a nice world.
Well, we know now it will be a long 4 years. Journalist, media consultant Mike McEntee, critic at large and well-known storyteller Howard Lieberman, and retired Lutheran pastor John Matthews talk about what lies ahead.
Hello, and thanks for joining us. Howard, John, thank you for coming in to talk. We want to talk about the election. What does it mean? And where do we go from here? So, real quickly, we just saw that Minnesota was not like the rest of the country, that there were some, victories here in Minnesota for the Democrats. But the story still has been that the Republicans are winning, they're taking over, they're owning everything. What's your take on it?
Yes, we won. I mean, we meaning the Democrats, and I will tell you now, I'm a Democrat. But we should have won more substantially. There were some people sitting on their hands, and some of that is the far left wing of the Democratic Party. Some of that is apathy. Some of that, though, is there was even dissatisfaction in Minnesota with what I believe is the direction of the Democratic Party nationally.
But I don't think it was a matter of peace of mind. But after this happened, I thought to myself, at least now, I think I have a very clear picture of where this country is at. We're split, and it's not the Civil War, but at the same point, you have got, in my estimation, you've got one party that is more progressive and even defends what they will claim is more the essence of who we are as an American people. And you have another group that wants to take us back to a more traditional oligarchic understanding of government. So just to say, when you say what just happened, I just think it was the clearest picture.
Well, here's my question. I was looking at the gross vote totals, and Kamala Harris got about 9 million votes less than Joe Biden did last time around, but Trump only got 1 million more. And I haven't looked at third-party candidates. I don't think there's that much of it. There's a lot of people who decided not to go to the polls for some reason, and I can't imagine they didn't know an election was happening. Good grief, you turn on your TV, or maybe they turned off their TV, maybe they turned off their phone, maybe they turned off their social media, but why did people stay away? Why did that group stay away from things?
I spent some time going door to door, knocking on doors, putting things on doorknobs, and getting chased off of property and things like that. And a common theme was, I hate both of them. I'm not a Trump supporter by any means, which means they're voting for Trump. I just don't like that Kamala Harris. I don't think what has she ever done? She's not smart. And that's based, of course, on racism and misogyny. But that was a feeling I got through my entire door knocking, talking to people time. It's just, I just don't like them. And so that kept some people away. A lot of people won't vote for Trump or wouldn't vote for Trump. Others wouldn't admit they would vote for Trump. But at the end of the day, Trump's people did a fairly good job painting a picture of Kamala as this incompetent woman who got her positions in life by sexual favors and all these other things. And there are a lot of men in this country and a lot of women in this country who question whether a woman has what it takes to be president. And I had one person say to me, and this was a woman, you know, once a month, we get kind of crazy. And if she's got access to the nuclear codes, do you really want a woman who's in that crazy time being able to launch a nuclear war? And all kinds of things I was shocked to hear. But there is a misogynistic streak, and I'll repeat myself, that runs very deeply in this country.
Yes, I think that's very said very well. The thing that I was thrown off on, or I've heard since the election day, that I just don't buy, or I don't think it's there, is when it said that if they had just done certain things different, it would have changed it. So then you scrutinize yourself, and yep, then it would have made a difference and all. But this is the way the country is split. And back to those who didn't show up, I heard that a lot too, and I think I heard over and over and over, I don't really like either one. So I realize voting for the third party isn't going to help probably or hurt either way. And so to not show up is one way of saying, if I voted for Kamala, I'll come home and not feel good. If I voted for Trump, I don't feel good about that. I think the staying away could be a way of washing one's hands, and which isn't the most responsible, but I heard that same difference between people. They just didn't like either side.
Let me throw another factor into this, distrust, because we've seen polling that shows that people distrust government. We've had one party telling people government doesn't work, and then they get elected to prove it. And then we have we've had a president, not this current one, but the one that's coming in, go on and on and on about you should not trust the media. You should not trust the media. The media is wrong. The media is wrong. And then you have sycophants in Fox News and other ones that will echo that for him and anything else he says to prove that the media is wrong. How much of a factor is that in what happened? And is it just that Trump was able to do this, or did he have other people, institutions here that helped him?
I think one of the things I noticed, and this is one example of, but I think it happened in lots of places in lots of ways. But when the right is throwing in that they are killing babies after they're born, I don't know what you do with that. It can be to just turn the heat up on that distortion of information. What's sad when I think about our population, though, the people who aren't thinking about that is they hear that and without question accept it and just go with it. I don't know what to do about that, but
Republicans tend to speak with one voice. They all say the same thing. They repeat the same lies. The post-birth killing of babies, and it begins to sound real because they're all saying it. Where Democrats will say this and say that and say this and say that, and that's okay because that's the way it should be. We should have the ability to have differing points of view but come together. But when you've got one side pound, 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 and the other guy going, yeah, but that's an issue, and that really hurt the Democrats this time around.
It seems to me like the Democrats are still playing like the Fairness Doctrine exists.
Right.
If, for those who don't remember, the Fairness Doctrine was put, President Reagan got rid of it. It was a law, but it required that you had, as a broadcaster, to keep your license, you had to give equal time to both sides on an issue. That no longer happens. That led to the rise of Fox News. I don't think the Democrats have changed their strategy or their tactics since that happened, and I think the Republicans just jumped upon that, I should say, and have been, like you said, just kept pounding and pounding and pounding away.
And I would take that one step further. Ever since the media the media has been accused of being left-leaning, the major newspapers that I read, the Times, Washington Post, and the Wall Street Journal, have all, not the Wall Street Journal, but they've all tried to appear as centrist as possible.
Right.
And which means they're moving further and further to the right. So you got the far right, and you've got the center right. And there is really nothing on the left or the more progressive side of the aisle, and that's it's difficult to overcome that. I don't know what we can do. As the Fairness Doctrine, the Republican stations, we'll call them Fox News and all the rest, it's all Fox, Trump, Trump, Fox, Trump, it's all this. There's no counterpoint, but God forbid Kamala should be on the cold open on Saturday Night Live, kind of poking fun at herself a little bit. Suddenly the Republicans, the fairness doctrine, we should have our own. And the Democrats are like, oh, geez, we probably made a mistake there.
What do we do? Here we are. We are in this moment. We are watching a train coming at us in Washington, D.C., the Trump administration. Every day we've heard drip, drip, drip. Here's who Donald Trump is going to nominate for this. He's going to do this. This law is going to be, this rule is going to be torn apart. A lot of people in this society that are just really scared.
Yeah, my sadness, although I say, and I put in a little Facebook thing in a sarcastic prayer yesterday, Dear Lord, thank you for making me white, male, Christian, heterosexual citizen. I think I'll get through the next 4 years pretty well. My sadness comes from those who aren't in one of those categories. They're at great risk. And I think if someone either diminishes it or thinks that's not important, I think, in all fairness, I think their head's in the sand. I have a deep worry, a deep sense of uncomfortable and fear. And where do we go? First, I have to get beyond. I have to work with my fear, because my fear right now is that this malignant narcissist with no guardrails, and I have a great fear that he's going to stimulate something on the international level. And there aren't many guardrails left. Therefore, what are we going to do? We're going to work in the future, address the issues, keep positive, and keep moving. I get that. But anybody who either comes close to or after World War II, we say, well, how could that happen? Because it did happen. Mm-hmm. I don't have any sureness. We're going to move ahead in the most positive way. Mm-hmm. I have no sureness that we will not have to deal with an international crisis that he creates. Mm-hmm. Why? Because of who he is.
Right.
Howard, have you heard from people who are worried?
I've heard from people. I don't know anyone who's not worried.
Uh-huh.
One of my biggest fears right now is my wife and I go visit her family in Pennsylvania for Thanksgiving. Mm-hmm. Half of the people are staunch Trump people. The other half, or maybe third, are staunch Democrats. And I'm afraid that there is no way for those two sides to engage in civil conversation about any issue at all. And my position will be, I don't want to talk politics. This is family time. If we're going to talk politics, I will leave the room. And I don't think that's healthy. I've always believed in engagement. Let's talk.
Right.
I have a lot of friends on the Republican side of the aisle. I was a corporate lawyer. Three-quarters of my clients were conservative Republicans.
Sure.
I can talk to anybody and engage in civil conversation. I'm afraid that's gone forever. Just gone. And I, however, want to say something positive. In 2 years, there's going to be another election. It's called the midterms. And if we all just do this, we're going to get killed in the midterms. If we keep staying positive and speak to people about some of the chaos that's already going to exist in 2 years, and work towards at least getting one of the houses of Congress able to oppose the worst excesses of Donald Trump and his minions, we may be okay.
Historically, the party in power, the president's party, loses in the midterms the next time around. Mm-hmm. I don't know if we should count on that naturally happening, or do we need to do something?
We need to work at it.
Okay.
I think following our kind of trauma and grief over what has happened, what is known as a Better Angel program by Bill Doherty out of the University of Minnesota is a program where people talk on both sides of the aisle and they engage. And I will try to do this in my own realm and maybe make it broader if possible. And that is, to bring my friends or in-laws who are afraid of everything and everyone. I want to have them over to my house when I invite my rabbi or my imam or my friend whose daughter just had an abortion or my transgender friend, and for an evening talk. Because on the deepest level, I think all that does away with the fear that leads to hiding behind the rhetoric of a Trump who's going to make things safe, is to lower that distrust. You talked trust earlier. The distrust that's out there, because until that fear is dealt with, people are going to still vote for that strong person who's going to make things right, not realizing that what Kamala Harris and Waltz were proposing as a platform was absolutely beautiful. Well, why couldn't they hear it? I think they're still controlled by their fears. So I want to move into creating those conversations, especially with people who are not there at all right now, and see if that might begin to soften their hearts.
Howard, we've talked about this, that there's really some bad storytelling going on, or at least not good storytelling on the other side. And how do we change that?
That's a problem. We discussed before we went on the air, I'm a professional storyteller. I get paid to tell stories. I was an active lawyer for many, many years. The person who wins a trial, almost regardless of the facts, is the lawyer who can tell a more compelling story and in a way that the jury can go, oh, that's a good story, and I kind of like that guy. I think I'll go that way. And many juries have been polled about why they went this way when the facts seem to go that way, and that comes up. What do we do? I don't know, because if you have 5 Democrats in a room, they'll all fight with each other and tell a different story. And if you have 5 Republicans in a room, as long as they've been prepped what they have to say, they'll tell the same story. And the story that the Republicans tell is an emotional story. Too often the story that we Democrats tell is an intellectual story. And when push comes to shove, especially as regards elections, emotions, and I hate to use this word, trump intellect.
Well, isn't that true with nearly every decision we make in life, that we make it from the gut and then rationalize it later? Isn't that really true? And
yes.
If that's the case, why haven't we figured this out?
But the emotion that I would like to deal with, because I totally agree, Howard, with that notion of that's where people live and decide, I want to give them an experience with the immigrant, or for in my case, the black, the person of color. I'm a Christian, the Jew, heterosexual, homosexual. I want to give them an emotional experience, because the topic just intellectually talked about doesn't change anything. But I am talking emotion when I say that, because I totally agree that that's what's deciding these things. While the Democrats, we talk kind of up here. It's lived in the heart. But in the heart is the same fear that we're talking about. But where probably the media or the rhetoric from the right has come is to amp up that fear.
Oh, yeah.
Well, they're amping that up. Well, I like to put that fire out, but it's a hard and long road, and it's yeah.
I mean, we've seen it successfully done. I'll call up one I know very well because I did a documentary about it. In Minnesota, the hate against gay people was codified. They tried to codify it into a constitutional amendment, banning same-sex marriage. And the people who were fighting the Republicans on that, because it was mostly Republicans, sat and did a lot of conversations, millions of conversations on phones with, people who were telling them their personal experience. And it boiled down to, it's really hard to hate somebody that you know. How do we get left and right here to know each other a little bit better? So, you gave some examples. That's one guy trying real hard and bringing people into his house to do that, and not everybody's going to do that. Are there other ways we can handle this?
Well, the reason that the other ways will continue is the education, college, university, high school. And I know the teachers. I've known a lot of high school teachers. I know a lot of college professors. They do sketch that. I would only say that with Bill Doherty on the Braver Angels thing too. That caught on. He did the first experiment at our congregation. And that now has gone national. I just think that's how it starts, right? Someone does something.
People got to get out of their shell. I mean, we
Yeah.
have become very siloed as a society with, with social media.
Yeah.
Our own, we know we stick with our tribe. We don't talk outside of that. I mean, if I could wave a magic wand, I'd get rid of certain media. I'd get rid of a lot of social media. Can't put that toothpaste back in the tube, though.
Nope.
Are there opportunities there, or are we just hate is something that's going to catch fire and it's going to burn?
I don't think it has to, but you're right, it's an uphill battle. There's no question about that. But I think it begins as a vision. I mean, just look at what the single rhetoric of Martin Luther King Jr. did. But we're back to yours, I think, Howard, too, in saying about the media from the right that has been so powerfully negative and even dishonest. Well, we don't have to meet that with the same level of dishonesty, but we need to meet it with the same level of passion, don't we?
I think we do. But we try to see, at least, we like to create the appearance, the illusion of being open-minded on our side. They don't have that. But the truth be known is that the more left-leaning media tries hard not to seem like left-leaning media, where the right-leaning and tipping over the far-edge media takes pride in the fact that they're right-wing and that they'll tell you what you need to know. And I'm going to ask you a question. You're a man of the cloth. Would you stand up in front of your parishioners and preach some of these things? Because I know that there are certain conservative evangelical type churches and or synagogues, I happen to be Jewish, that preach very conservative point of view and don't say, well, what do you all think, parishioners or congregants? Are you willing to become a little more, not strident, but let's all just love each other.
Less careful, less
careful,
cautious.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is a problem because in America, you can take Riverside Church in New York City. Everybody knew there that William Sloane Coffin was a raving left, and if you go to that church and you're going to listen to that, that's what you're going to hear.
Right.
Okay. Most of our parishes out here, or around the country though, it's this mixture of left and right. And so the clergy are walking a bit of a fine. I mean, you try to say what you can say, even if you lean one way or the other, but you've got both out there, and the question is, this is a fine line, but it's a tough road to walk. How do you challenge people and have them think about these important things and still show up next week? Because if you simply tick people off, you will be turning into a left-wing church or a right-wing church, and that'll be good. I was in churches always that had both, and that was a really hard thing to do, so I worked hard at it, of saying what could be said and get to it, but yet knowing, ready for conversation this week, because what you bumped up over here, these people are going to come after you. But in America, where you can choose your church, how do you keep the folk coming, or don't you? When you speak somewhat, we're called in our letters of call, it said not only to preach the gospel, but you're supposed to preach the prophetic word.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's the call, to speak and say these things that we're talking about. But you walk into most churches, as you say, on a Sunday, like I was really interested listening last Sunday, a number of churches online, how they handled the Sunday after the election. Not because I realize how difficult it is, but I wondered how they would do it.
Do you have any idea how they did it?
Yeah, some bumped right up against it. You don't have to name names even exactly, but they could call it out that these people voted this way and this means this and is this where we're going and this means... They talked about it, yep. Some probably ignored it, but most of them addressed it.
I remember going to a funeral for someone in my family who was Catholic before she died and was active in her church. At the funeral, the priest sort of said, yeah, this person, we liked it very much. Then went on a tirade about abortion. A tirade about abortion and the evils of abortion and on and on and on. And I'm sitting there thinking, what does this have to do with this person in my family who has passed? It had absolutely nothing to do. But this priest had a bully pulpit, and he used it to hammer away at points. And now you're a decent human being, although we don't know each other very well. You strike me as a very nice person.
I would agree with that, though.
And you try to bring all the flock together.
Yep.
That's the Democratic Party way. Let's bring the flock together. We don't agree on certain issues. Republicans, they're not bound by that. They don't want to bring the flock together. They have a flock that believes so much of what they believe, and if they can bring a few fringe players in along with that, they will hammer. And I'll come to a service and say nice things.
No, but it was a light indoor sport for me to be challenged by and want to engage those on the far right. I didn't say anything that just blew it up, but afterward I would go to them in a combination of facts and humor. I realized, you weren't quite where I was in that message this morning, right? Oh yeah, no, I didn't agree. Okay, but we can talk. But you're right about that Democratic thing. This isn't a conversation to beat you up.
Right.
Let's talk about what this means. So we keep working.
We keep working, and they'll the other side, if I'm pointing to my right, will hammer away at whatever. They'll call Nancy Pelosi the most vile names that they can come up with. And they will make fun of Pete Buttigieg because he's a gay man. They will do all these things that are not principled, that will play to their base. And that worries me.
I'm concerned still about the next 2 years where somebody who's going to have to do something political to prevent the fluoride from being taken out of my water, from the Department of Education being shut down, from somebody who has a brain worm from deciding that we're going to get rid of vaccines. We don't know that for sure, but there are so many things that could happen. I do think we need to take political action too.
Agreed.
And I think, again, I don't know how we do that because we've got the minority, but I think we need to be, it isn't the resistance, but I think it needs to be, we need to put out the truth. We need to speak the truth. We need to ask that the media report the truth, and that we can't accept anything less than that. And we need to call people out on it.
Totally agree that yeah, exactly. I'm curious to know now how the Republicans in the Congress and in the Senate are going to respond. Now that they have the power, they have the majority. Mm-hmm. I have a hunch that some of those are going to respond in ways we didn't expect. I just have a hunch, or an intuition. I think that'll be fascinating to watch how they respond. But that the power of resistance for us, we may take to the streets, and I don't mean violently and with guns, but if certain things are proposed on those national levels, and they just are not what we Americans think this world should be about, protest has always had a power that works. I mean, it helps. So yeah, you're asking also, besides that, as it unfolds, what can we do to make a difference? That's one very good way. Of course, corresponding with your congressperson. We still have 50% of each of those bodies, Yeah. I mean, it may not make the final vote, but they're sure going to have a voice.
Well, John, Howard, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you, Mike, Howard, and John. You can reach each one of them via our email address, democraticvisions@gmail.com. That's democraticvisions@gmail.com. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you next time.
Democratic Visions is handcrafted by volunteers from Eden Prairie, Hopkins, Minnetonka, Edina, and Bloomington. Watch us on select cable systems and on our YouTube channel.